Alright folks, welcome back. It's the elimination stage of the major at Copenhagen, and we did terrible. We did terrible. We got all the... I don't know why Ecstatic is here. Oh, sorry, this is the final standings. This is what I had put in. Only got Furia, only got C9, because unfortunately, there was one game between Eternal Fire and Heroic that could have gotten us in. But unfortunately, both of them, or Heroic won, Eternal Fire lost, rendering this entire sequence useless. Actually, we might not, we wouldn't have even made it even if we had got that, considering Apex failed, Saw failed, and Gamer Legion, as well as ENCE failed. So this actually would have been a dud either way, but this major has been absolutely insane. The rise of Brazil has been incredible to watch. I'm very happy as a region that we now have 7 spots going into the Shanghai major. Things are looking very good in that regard. 3 spots for Asia, so that means that RMR is a little bit more competitive as well. But that all said and done, it really shows the level that has risen in the other regions, in the Americas, of the Asia regions, in comparison to that of the Tier 2 in the Europe region, where we saw Koi and Amkal going 0-3, and only really Ecstatic being that big Tier 2 European team to actually come up through the grindstone and actually make it through, who I personally don't believe in. And we'll basically get into the elimination stage and my discussion on them. I mean, you can still follow along. We're going to try to go for the gold. I'll get a silver after I lock in my picks here. And I think it's very easy to get the gold. And, you know, if I get the silver, you know, you can hang me, I guess. But I really still do enjoy doing these, and I hope you guys want to follow along with my rationale. I know a lot of you like to just skip to the end, but if you want to see my rationale and my thoughts on the major so far, this is basically the video to do so. So as far as my 3-0s are going to go, I'm just going to go with the strongest teams, I feel. FaZe and Spirit. I think FaZe have really shown to me that I feel like they're sloughing that moniker, that they're this team that has to go through in 2-2 or 3-2 and just has to get it done to get into the playoffs. I don't think that's the case anymore. I do feel like they're playing a little bit more of a consistent brand of Counter-Strike ever since we switched over to CS2, and I feel like I'm in a situation where I don't... You know, G2 did beat them in the RMR. That was the case, but that was a pretty low stakes game. And I still do feel that FaZe are playing a very elite level of Counter-Strike right now. They should be the favorites to make it to the final. And I think that this is a team that I can still back. Same goes for Spirit. Of course, there are hiccups all across the board for both of these teams en route to this RMR. Of course, Spirit dropping that best of 3 to Mouse, but I'm still very confident in what I see from this roster. I see a consistent system built out of Chopper and Halley. I see a player in Dong that is destined for greatness. I see a player in Shiro that is consistent as ever and is really putting up the numbers that he's supposed to. And you've got some great supportive pieces in Zontix and in the likes of Magic. So I'm really excited for both these rosters. I think it's going to be a tough find to ask for a lot of these rosters that are going up against them. That, like, 9 times out of 10, I think these two teams are going to beat what's ahead of the competition. And you know, maybe it might not be here and it might screw us, but it will happen if they make the playoffs, which I think is a high likelihood. As far as the teams that are making it on to the 3-1, 3-2. Actually, you know, we'll go to the 0-3 because we might as well. I'm gonna put through Mongols. I think they're incredible to actually make it to this stage of the competition. I'm really happy that I saw with them. I love to see the resistance that they have against tough draws and tough asks, but they stuck through it. They went down 0-2. They clawed it all the way back to the 3-2 mark, and I'm very impressed with what they showed throughout this Copenhagen major. Unfortunately, I just look at the rest of the competition, and I just don't see a world where they can stack up against the rest of these teams. I mean, you know, I feel very confident in Imperial. I think they've been a very legitimate force throughout the opening stage. Sure, they're a little inconsistent, but decency, no way. They proved me wrong. They showed that they can't crumble under the pressure, and I think they have at least a best of 1 or a best of 3 within them to make it through at least further on in the competition. The second team I'm going to pick in is Pain. As an America's boy, I have to just stick to my guns, and I have to say that the biggest Zero performance wasn't overperformance. I love what he's outputting. I've been screaming his name from the rooftops for years now. Ever since that initial Pain iteration, he's been putting in work and dealing with the pieces that he has here with players like Kawes, Nissim, Lux. These are not players that you were thinking are elite Brazilian competition, and yet still they found a way to make it through at a 3-1 stage, no less, to this elimination portion. But that that being said, I do think that domestically, I put Imperial and Furia above this Pain roster, and I also feel as though a roster like an Ecstatic or a Complexity or Eternal Fire that are on the fringes of this competition will be able to take it over the edge. And for that reason, I'm going to put Pain in the O3. Of course, I've seen permutations and combinations that Mongols and Pain can play one another, or Ecstatic and Pain can play one another in the O1. So I'm just going to stick with this because, of course, if I try to follow through with the permutations too closely on the simulator, we're going to sit here for days and I'm not going to get a satisfied answer. And, of course, we can't get the diamonds, so I just really want to stick to my guts on this one. That's why I'm going to go with Mongols and Pain in the O3. As far as the teams that I will have to go through, the first team I'm going to talk about is NAVi. I know a lot of people are actually not very high on NAVi as a roster. They look at this roster on paper and they're like, what the hell, man? Like, there is no superstar on this roster. There's nothing exciting about it, but I really do believe that the sum is a better of its parts when it comes to NAVi. AlexiB is calling an outstanding game around side these 4 players that are really dedicated towards the system. You know, Wonderful's outputting numbers, JL is doing his job, and so is Bit. It's really Imad that I think is blocking off this team from going actually truly elite to a top 4 at the Copenhagen major status as of right now. But I do think that they're the caliber of a team to get the job done and beat the competition that is worthy ahead of them and qualify for that playoff stage. You know, whether or not they're going to go far in the tournament, I don't really believe. But I think from get-go, from what I saw them at the RMR, I feel pretty confident in NAVi actually advancing towards the next stage. I'm really happy with what AlexiB has done with this core. I truly am. I'm going to put through Verus Pro. I think this is another roster that a lot of people are doubting. But the fact of the matter is, this is another team that I could rely on time in and time out to give me a certain brand of Counter-Strike, and show that they are still an elite level Counter-Strike team in the world. You have this roster that, has been farming the ESL challengers of late, that struggled at Kato. They couldn't make it to the main stage after a loss to Cloud9, and I believe they had another ugly best of 3 loss. But the fact of the matter is that I feel like that was truly a hiccup for this roster. You look at the players like Norbert, who has truly improved here in CS2, has so much more gravitas to the entries that he brings to the table, has to be feared on the CT side when he's playing in positions like Pit on Inferno. You have James, who has mastered CT side opping, who's found a way to crack that code when it comes to the elite level AWP plays in the world. You look at players like Flit, who is borderline superstar status, who has a chance to really consider himself into that status when it comes to this major in Copenhagen. So I think there's just such a strong base for Virtus Pro here that I really do feel like I can really rely on their consistent map pool and their consistent players to make them a playoff contending team. So I'm very excited to see Virtus Pro at this major. They've really improved and have created a much more exciting brand of Counter-Strike with how James is liking to call within this new version of the game. So I think it's going to be very exciting to watch Virtus Pro play. I'm going from like semi-least confident to like semi-most confident here. But we're going to keep going along. I'm going to put through G2. I don't like doing this. I don't believe in this pick. I think this is one of the picks that I don't believe in the most because I think that this G2 roster has had some serious trouble at majors. You think back to Paris, where they struggled in that BO3 decider against Fnatic to advance. You think about the RMR that they had previously at Antwerp. This team has had some really some big troubles ever since that finals run at Stockholm, and I'm not really confident in this team at this point. But the fact of the matter is, Nico is still ramping up. You still have to give some credence to that 2-0 game that they did at the RMR against FaZe. You still have to give some respect to m0NESY, and you still have to give to the potential that Hunter has within him to have a pop-up performance. I'm not sold on Nexa. I still feel like even though he is a bit more supportive than JKS, even though he's communicating a little better than JKS, the numbers and the actual support that he's giving to these players is not actually netting into positive reinforcement, and that's what worries me, right? You have 2 players that are liabilities to the roster, and you put a heavy reliance on players like Nico and m0NESY to put you through these games. And if m0NESY has just a pedestrian game, this roster really, really struggles. And I think that's where it could bite them. If they have a slow start, considering they weren't in that opening stage, things are going to get a little bit dicey for them. And I can see a world where they crack under the pressure, they make a wrong veto again, and they don't make the playoffs. But I am still excited to see if we can get these big-name players in big-name games. I want this G2 roster, for the good of the game, for the viewership of the game, to qualify for the playoffs, and that's why I have G2 going through mainly, and just that star power that Monacy and Nico have, and that I know that Hunter can still produce some big time clutches for this game, for this team when the game does really matter. Another team that I'm like super iffy on, man, is Vitality. I just feel as though this roster is like in such a weird position right now. I feel like they can make a deep run at this major, and I also feel like they can just bomb out of this major altogether. Messi and Flames are still hot under the collar for me. I don't think they're completely integrated with this roster, and they've finally gotten past that honeymoon period that this roster has had, and I still don't feel very confident in Messi's anchoring abilities. It's been some really odd performances, and he's been a liability. He's still been able to produce some pretty good clutches that allowed them to qualify to this stage of the competition, but I'm not too confident in Vitality altogether, considering that ZywOo still in pressure situations still becomes a shell of himself. He provides enough numbers in terms of like a 1.1, 1.2, but sometimes you need this guy to really step up big, and I'm hoping that he can provide that at this major, because if he disappears, I think the system of this roster is really under question, and I'm very curious to see what kind of Vitality we get this major. I'm hoping a good one. Again, big name team, big name players. I hope they make it to the playoffs, because if they do, I think they're going to create some exciting fireworks, and I think this playoffs is going to be wide open if we can get Vitality to the playoffs. It's just about a question of getting there. Mouse is going to be another roster that I put through. It's like these last 4 picks could really be any team. I could see Cloud9 making it through. I could see Eternal Fire making it through. Hell, I could see Furia making it through, or maybe even Complexity. But unfortunately, I'm going to go with Mouse here, just because I feel as though Shuhei has still retained majority of that system that he had with Frozen. It's not as potent, it's not as strong, but it is still damn good. And I'm at that 80% mark. I'm still very confident in him as an IGL and his system that he's created here, that he has the goods to make it to the playoffs. And it showed that the setup, the preparation, they were one of the first teams to really knock Spirit off their perch post Katowice, and that really impressed me. It really turned my eye to say that, hey, maybe this has a shout. That being said, Brolin is no Frozen, and so you lose that potential of a player to go Super Saiyan and to just win you games automatically. You lose that player in Frozen. And Brolin can do that for you, but it's a lot less consistent. And that's my issue with this Mouse roster, is that there is a floor that is consistently lower than that of the Frozen-led Mouse roster. And they have lost a little bit of veterancy as well. That being said, they've added Zipnix in the coaching staff, and I really like that move. I like that little added boost that they get in the behind the scenes of this roster. And again, I still really do believe in Shuhei as a caller. I still do think Torji can provide you a certain level of opping, and I think that Xerxin is one of the next best world-class anchors, or not anchors, openers that we have in the game right now, and I'm really, really excited to see his development. I have a lot of belief in him that he can become that superstar player, and for that reason, I'm going to have Mouse going through due to that really consistent system. So as I said before, there's one spot left here, and I think that I can go to a number of teams. You have Complexity, who can play very well against international competition, but have an incredibly low floor and could honestly bomb out of this competition. You have Cloud9, who very similarly can lose to anybody, can beat remotely anyone as well, but I still really do feel like that opping presence is going to hurt them. I still do feel like they take turns as to who is actually consistently their star on this team. Sometimes you get Axile, sometimes you get Electronic. But the fact of the matter is I'm not going to have 100% Perfecto, and that's my issue. I'm not going to have 100% Boomich, who's in your face, and that's an issue. And for that reason, I'm not going to have Cloud9 go through. Eternal Fire actually was, before the opening stage started, I had them actually going through as my next and final team to eke their way through that next stage. But my issue with them is that when they actually have had pressure on themselves, I didn't like what I saw from them. I wasn't impressed. I thought that the match against Heroic really rubbed me the wrong way. And I think the brand of Counter-Strike that they have when the pressure is on is not as consistent, and Major really crumbles under the pressure and calls a poorer game. I like what I'm seeing from Xantares. I'm liking what I'm seeing from Wakadia. And honestly, Calix has really impressed me. He stepped up in the anchoring departments. But the fact of the matter is, Woxic is incredibly inconsistent on this team. And Major, frankly, again, just crumbles under the pressure when he's calling on some of these T sides. And it's really costed them. So for that reason, I'm not going to have Eternal Fire going through. I actually am going to have, funnily enough, Heroic. Because I didn't believe in them to go 3-0. Because I think there's still a lot of kinks to work out for this roster. But the fact of the matter is this roster has hit that ceiling very, very quickly, and I don't even know how high that ceiling can be, considering Teslas is in a career-best form right now. He's playing absolutely out of his mind. You have a player like Kixan who is learning on the fly, adapting on the fly, learning how to mid-round as we're seeing it. You've got a fantastic coach in Saw who has developed this roster very, very quickly. You have Nerds who is quickly shedding and sloughing that moniker that he was only good on an ENCE and is becoming a world-class rifler in his own right. And you have a Soso, Opera, and Nikodas, who I'm still not impressed by, but he's getting the job done. And at this point, that's all they really need. A Opera who might not be getting you that op presence, but it's still so in terms of the rifling in that sense. So I'm excited to see what Heroic can provide. I think that Kixan has developed a lot, and it gives them a puncher's chance at almost every map in the pool. I don't really count them out in a lot of these situations. I do think they can go to toe-to-toe with all of these teams that I've left in the competition, and they're coming off hot from the opening stage, that I have an expectation that Heroic will be that last team to eke through. As you can see, I'm not giving too much credence to the teams that are coming off the opening stage and having that extra boon that, you know, they're like fresh and ready. But I really do just want to have a calm, peaceful elimination stage so we can get to that playoff stage and have a really exciting event. I am going to lock this in. Let me know what your picks are down below. If you're still alive in the Diamond Coin campaign, I would love to see what you guys have going through to the next stage of the competition. I'm loving watching the Copenhagen. I hope you guys are too. We'll be back for the playoff stage of the competition. Stay tuned for some podcasts. Stay tuned for all that good stuff and that content. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.